Welcome back to the South Florida Recruiting Report. Marcus Benjamin here representing for On Three Rivals, bringing you news and analysis opinions about South Florida recruiting. Of course, Florida, one of the top states when it comes to recruiting. And this season, of course, is no different, with plenty of top recruits in the Sunshine State. To discuss some topics today, I've got John Santucci joining me from USA Today to talk a little recruiting. Thanks for joining me today, John.
Oh, Marcus, what's up, man? It's good to see you, my friend.
You as well. First off, it's been a crazy year when it comes to firings of head coaches. It's like week 6 right now, and I think it's like eight coaching vacancies or something like that that's out there. Something like that. Most recently, James Franklin lost 3 straight games. Now he is out of a job, which is kind of crazy.
Who saw that coming a month ago, by the way, right? I mean, Penn State, I want to say a month ago, was like number maybe 2 in the country. And now they don't have a coach, which is just bizarre. But it is the nature of college athletics right now, which is, once the donors start panicking, you're probably screwed. So look, this is a long track record of not winning big games. Obviously the Oregon game started it, and I think that just that started the snowball down the mountain. But it's going to be fascinating to see who Penn State goes after. I still think Matt Rule's probably in the driver's seat for that job, being a former Penn State guy. That's the one thing that Penn State has not checked those boxes since Paterno left is, they haven't brought back one of their own. And so I think Matt Rule, I think Nebraska's 5-1 right now. I think he's a guy that they'll definitely take a very long look at. I think you have to look at Indiana's coach right now. He's probably the hottest name in college football, thanks to Fernando Mendoza. I would imagine Matt Rule, would be in the front runner for that job. And then, by the way, there's a lot of programs, maybe Virginia Tech, that would really like James Franklin. He is from Maryland. He's Maryland's coach in waiting at one point. So, does he want to leave the Big Ten? I have a feeling a lot of jobs are going to come open, though, in the next 8 weeks. So I think this coaching carousel is going to get really crazy. I know you and I want to talk some flips later. I think there's a lot of guys that are going to be changing schools in late November just because of the coaching carousel. So, but Franklin's certainly the biggest name so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't lose to Northwestern at home. That's a no-no. You can't really do that. I mean, and then UCLA, who, lost their coach as well this season. You weren't expecting Penn State to go to the West Coast and lose. So Oregon, of course, nothing, to be mad about there with Penn State losing that game in overtime. There was nothing to have a gripe about with that game. It was just the two losses afterwards. I'm still surprised, though. I thought they would let him finish out the season, but that's the nature of college football these days. Just you got to win. Just win, baby. Just like Al Davis used to say.
Let me go back to that, what you just said, though, because I keep thinking about it. Do you let a coach finish out the season, or once you've decided that you're going to move on, do you just do it? And with recruiting the way it is, what's the advantage of waiting if you can, start telling your recruits, hey, we're going in this direction or we're not going in this direction? And I'm going to give you the guy that I just can't figure it out is, what is Florida going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a coach who is perpetually on the hot seat and you keep giving him one more year and keep giving him one more year, why? I mean, you're not building a program in a 1-year increment. I don't care what the transfer portal says. You're either the guy or you're not. And at some point, I think Florida's got to go, is this guy going to win us a natty? I don't think so. I think he recruits pretty well. I love the way he closed last year, but I mean, I don't think he's the guy. So at what point do they just go, okay, we're going to cut ties? I think Penn State absolutely did the right thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Penn State necessarily did the right thing. After 3 losses, I think in this college football playoff 12-team era, there's a chance you could definitely make the playoff with 3 losses being in the Big Ten. I think you could still find a way to maybe even get into the Big Ten championship game. And if you get there and you lose, then I think you still maybe have a shot. I think if it was one more loss, maybe I could maybe justify it. But say if they run the table for the rest of these games, which I doubt they would. I think that's kind of what more.
Don't they still have Ohio State and Michigan?
They definitely have Ohio State. I'm not sure if Michigan's on their schedule, but
well, maybe that's just one of the schools they've never beaten, or he's never beaten. My thing is this: once you lose to Oregon, there is such a loud call for should James Franklin move on, because you've got to beat somebody good at some point. You have to beat somebody good, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how long you keep kicking that can down the road and say, oh, he might become the guy. What more do you need? You just spent $3.1 million on a defensive coordinator. They spent a ton of money bringing back a bunch of guys, including some really good players from Florida, like Katron Allen and Zane Durant and guys like that were looking at the draft. I know Zane Durant got a big payday for staying at Penn State this year. At some point you need return on investment, right? So
for sure.
I just don't feel like he was ever going to be the guy.
I hear you. I probably would have just let him kind of play out the season, just because, just Penn State's been relevant at least for the past couple of years. So I think maybe they do him that justice. But, I guess at this point, you just want to rip the Band-Aid off and just start that search now. And I understand that as well. I definitely think Florida should have got rid of Billy Napier last year, to be honest with you.
Right.
So I totally agree with you there. Off to a rough start again. I think after that South Florida game, I would have let him go, to be honest, because you can't lose to South Florida. I'm just no disrespect to that program and what Golish has built over there in Tampa, but you can't lose to a team like that at home. I just don't see it.
And then you look lifeless offensively against Miami. Now, by the way, Miami's defense had a lot to do with that. Don't get me wrong, but they looked awful against Miami for all but 2 drives offensively. And their defense had to play unbelievably. And I think probably Carson Beck had his worst game at Miami at the same time, for that game to look competitive into the fourth quarter. And they had to get screwed by the referees. All those things had to happen against Miami just for Florida to look like they were in the game in the fourth quarter. So, I watched the Texas A&M game, and I didn't watch the Texas game because I was driving to Northwestern Central at the time, but I don't see it. I think this guy, I don't know how many lives. I know he's a Gator. He feels like a cat. I don't know how many lives he gets, but it's too many.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Let's talk. Enough of that coach talk or coach speak, I guess you could say, and talk a little bit more about recruiting with this Penn State roster. Because the classes don't really have Florida guys, checking their class, but their roster does. As far as King Mack, Randy Arterica, Kobe Howard, I could definitely see these guys transferring to any one of the 3 Florida schools. I believe all of the Florida schools were involved at some point in recruiting all 3 of those guys. Do you think any chance these guys transfer out of Penn State after the season and return to the Sunshine State?
Yeah, and the guy, that I just makes the most sense to me is Randy Arterica, because I didn't understand why some of the schools were slow playing him a year ago. I know that at one point I think he wanted to go to Miami, and that door wasn't fully open or something like that. That didn't make any sense to me. If you watched him last year, that kid was phenomenal. And he's a guy who can work in, I think, at multiple spots depending on your scheme. He's a guy who can play outside and then bump inside if he needs to. So I love him. I love his game. I feel like he would fit very well at a Miami or a Florida State. just based on the way that they use their guys. So I think that's a guy, especially Miami's going to have some D-line needs coming up next year, just based on who's leaving most likely in the draft. He makes a lot of sense. I think, we had King Mac rated really high. I look at that guy as just a massive ball hawk and a winner. Everywhere he goes, he wins. And Kobe Howard, there's a kid that came over from Pensacola, and I felt both years, his junior, senior year at Western, that he was underrated. I just looked at this kid and I go, just alpha wide receiver, a guy who I think can probably play DB. Reminded me a lot last year of, who's the guy at Chaminade a couple years ago that went to Florida State? Edwin
Joseph?
Yes. Where I just feel like he checks a lot of boxes. When he's on the field, you're better. And so I could definitely see any of those three leaving, but the one that makes the most sense, at least from that standpoint, to me, would be Adarica.
Yeah, I agree. I think Adarica, Florida State was very interested at one point. Miami was interested, and then towards the end, they kind of fell off for some reason as far as recruiting. So I could definitely see him returning to the state of Florida. Kobe Howard, to me, is definitely an interesting one. That's another one. It was almost like kind of the same type of recruitment. Like Miami was very interested at first. Florida State, I believe, was involved as well. And Florida, I think, was also involved with recruiting Kobe Howard. And then he, it was Ole Miss at one point, and then it became Penn State. So Kobe Howard, I think, is definitely a player that is definitely a player I think a team should take a chance on. Just
for
because
sure.
He's already shown that he can do some things right now, like as far as in the college game as a freshman. He's already, was producing for the Nittany Lions. So he's already shown that he can play on the college level. So I think he's a guy that teams in Florida should definitely take a flyer on for sure. So we'll see what actually happens to that roster. Matt Rule is definitely an interesting case, I guess, to watch. Of course, that class as well, Nebraska, would be interesting class to watch if Matt Rule does indeed leave Nebraska for Penn State. But let's talk a little bit more about these Florida recruiting classes, and which are pretty solid. All three of the big three are still in the top 20 in recruiting for the 26 classes. But people want to know, who's the underrated guy as far as these classes are concerned for each of these teams. And I'll start with, for me, for Florida State. I don't see how maybe people might be like, well, how's he underrated? But I think Jason Lopez is going to be that underrated guy for Florida State. I really see a guy like him just making an immediate impact. He's just a shifty wide receiver that, can make plays, makes tough catches, always gets open. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but definitely has the traits to make an impact in year one. Another guy, as far as who probably could make an impact in year one for Miami, is Justin Edwards. I think this guy's super underrated, bro. I think he could be a 4-star. A lot of these sites do have him as a 3-star right now. I think he should be bumped up a star to a 4-star. I just think he's just really can be dominant. And he's one of the most underrated players of that Miami class.
I have Justin Edwards. You asked me who I thought was underrated. Justin Edwards is the first name from Miami for me. I just, I saw him a couple weeks ago. I saw him in the spring. He is long. He is violent. He plays with an old school Miami edge. He's going to be in somebody's face every other play, which I absolutely love. He walks right on the line, but to me doesn't cross it, which I think is awesome. I think Miami fans are going to absolutely love him. Really, really good linebacker. And I'll tell you another guy that I just feel like the way he's playing is not getting enough attention. And I don't think he's underrated because on the USA Today Top 100, he's number 10 in the state. I think Ashari Charles is just killing it right now at Venice. I think he's got something like, when you look at the level of competition they've played, right? IMG, First Academy, Tampa Bay Tech, teams like that. I think he's got something like 21 tackles for loss going into last week, like 9 to 10 sacks, 4 forced fumbles. He reminds me a little bit of Khalil Mack in his ability to tackle the football, and we're watching Justin now. So good. I think Ashari Charles is a guy that not enough Miami fans are talking about because I feel like, he's probably going to be a stand-up linebacker, but just so good at everything he does. And if he does bump down to the line, puts on a little bit of weight, I think he's going to be phenomenal. So I just feel like that's a guy. I know he's a 4-star. I just feel like more people should be talking about Ashari right now.
Yeah, I agree with you there too. We are watching highlights of Justin J.J. Edwards here. Just an explosive linebacker, just a terror, as you can see on these highlights. I'll start putting up Ashari Charles later, but I think Miami really has 2 really elite defenders that you can play almost anywhere,
right.
in that front 7. I think they're versatile guys. I think they're guys that will just get better as they, progress through their college careers. And I think they'll make an immediate impact, to be honest with you. With Miami, I would suspect that they're going to lose a couple of guys. Of course, the transfer linebacker from Rutgers is going to move on, and Wesley Basaint, of course, is going to be moving on. So you've got Popo Aguirre, who I do like as well. He's kind of the next in line, and then you got a couple of other young guys in the mix at linebacker, but I think Justin Edwards and Ashari Charles will definitely push for playing time, as soon as probably even next year.
Yeah, I think Justin's a guy. I completely agree with you. And again, like I said, I watched him just not long ago against Jones. Just always around the ball, right? Always making plays. I saw Edgewater in the spring, and I immediately penciled them in as the team to play St. Thomas Aquinas in the state championship game. I think their front 7 is that good. He's a huge, huge part of that. Guy you can move around the formation. But like I said, I just love the edge. He plays with a real edge. He's got some dog in him for sure. And I really like watching him.
You know who else has some dog in him? Malachi Toney, man. That guy's that guy is just fun to watch.
That's not breaking news, my friend.
Yeah, not breaking news by any stretch of any imagination. I mean, that kid's been a dog since he was in Pampers,
Right.
Just to see him do what he is doing for the Miami Hurricanes in year 1 is not a surprise to anybody who's watched him in high school and beyond, because he's just shown that he's just a good football player overall. He's actually a very underrated blocker considering his size, and he catches everything. He gets open. He's so explosive. I mean, one of the prettiest plays from that Florida State game for me was the one that was called back for like illegal motion or something like that, where it was just a simple catch in the flat, and he just took it all the way for a touchdown. It was just an amazing play just to watch, because he turned such a small looking play to a big one. The question is, like, who's the next Malachi Toney for next year, as in a freshman who could just burst onto the scene and really kind of show, what he can do. I mean, it's, it was Jeremiah Smith, Malachi Toney now. Is there another South Florida or Florida guy that you see that could make a big impact like those two guys in the past 2 years?
You know, the name that I have on the top of my list is Chauncey Kennan from Booker. I love his length. He's a guy I believe had 16 pass breakups as a junior, and he doesn't have really big stats this year. I think he has one pick because nobody's dumb enough to throw to his side of the field. I think he can step on the field right away at Florida State and make an impact in that secondary. He is really long. He's so talented. And he's an alpha, right? So I look at a guy like that. I think he's the number one rated player right now in Florida State's class. He's a guy that I think that could definitely step on the field right away. I'm going to give you another one out of Miami's class. This is not a Florida guy, but I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Jackson Cantwell on the field right away. You look at what Miami did a couple years ago with Maui Goa, putting him at right tackle, coming out of IMG, very similar ranking when Maui Goa came out of IMG. You look at Cantwell, right in that, depending on the recruiting service, 1 to 3, I think nationally. And considering what Miami is going to invest in him, I would imagine that that's a guy that they're going to want to get on the field sooner than later. We're watching Chauncey right now. Kennan, we've got him as the number one cornerback in the state. Just a really, really good football player. Obviously goes both ways for a Booker program that, has been a perennial Final Four team the last couple of years. But as far as the guy that I think is the easiest to pencil in right now from Florida, I think it would be him. And I think Kaj Baker maybe at UCF. I think Nitro's because of his speed and his shiftiness, I could see him definitely playing early at UCF.
Kaj Baker is a player that I had written down as well as that could make an immediate impact as well for the UCF Knights. For me, though, I got to go with Samarian Wingo, man. I feel like he is the guy who could definitely make an impact in year one because it's not only that he's explosive, but he's big too. It's not like he's a small, shifty slot receiver like Malachi Toney or Jason Lopez. This guy is about as tall, I think, as Joshua Moore, who is also making an impact as a freshman for Miami.
I saw Wingo for the first time at a 7-on-7. I want to say going into his sophomore year, and that was when St. Augustine had Carl Jenkins, who's now playing at UCF and getting playing time as a true freshman. They had the wide. They had a slot that is now at Mercer. So they had a pretty good wide receiver group, and they had Lachlan Hewitt, who's at USF. And so I just watched this the 7-on-7, and I went over to their coach and I said, "Coach, who in the world is that?" And he actually said, "Good eye. That's Samarian Wingo. He's going to be the best one out of all of them." And if you're a Miami fan, go watch the Nice game. Go watch his footage against Nice. If he's got the highlight up, I think he high points a ball on a Hail Mary right before halftime that I think he caught between 5 guys, and he just outjumped everybody. I think he had 2 in front and 3 in back, and somehow boxed himself out and made the catch. The only thing that I struggle with projecting wide receivers is knowing what the room looks like a year from now. What does Miami do at quarterback? I know Darion's committed, but do you want to get an older guy? And then, do you end up bringing in wide receivers? You and I talked about the dream scenario where somehow Miami finds a way to get to bring somebody from Ohio State home. I will not even mention his name, but
already mentioned in this podcast, if you're paying attention though.
I did hear it, but not in this category. So, but I think there's a lot of questions when you're talking about wide receivers. I didn't see Joshua Moore playing right away, though. I just didn't realize that. I didn't think that was going to happen. And obviously, he had a big game. What was it, USF, right? So, Wingo's a good call. Wingo's a really good call.
Yeah. As you can see, playing highlight him, it's just explosive, man. Once he gets the
Right.
ball in his hands, he's gone. And like you said, can high point the football. I feel like he's really an underrated gem, and I think he's only underrated because he's at St. Augustine. Let's
100%.
be
He's
honest.
at the wrong STA for people to rank him high. Yes.
Exactly, exactly. If he was playing for STA, Northwestern, IMG, I think we would be maybe talking about him as a 5-star guy.
But and just to put this in perspective a little bit, and I know that people in South Florida don't want to hear about anywhere else in the state, and I get that, right? But as somebody who covers the state, um, he balled out against a really good Bulls team. He balled out against a really good, really solid defensive Nice team, and he balled out against Columbia, which was undefeated, going into that game and had some really nice wins. Those are all legit ranked teams. So for just in case you're going like, oh, well, who's he playing against? He's playing against really good competition.
Yeah.
And right now, I think we have St. Augustine we have them number one in the state, just ahead of American Heritage. So obviously, we'll see how that all plays out come playoff time, but he is definitely a player that should not be overlooked based on where he's playing.
Yeah, that'll definitely be a fun matchup if that ends up being the championship game, St. Augustine against American Heritage. Hopefully, we'll get that matchup. John Santucci once again joining me from USA Today. Right before we get out of here, I did. It's always fun to talk flips, right? Samar and Ringo already, you know, shut down his recruitment. A lot of players are doing that these days. I would say
Right.
it's probably more than any other year that I've seen that players are really shutting down their recruitment during the season as they do. But there are going to be some flips as there are every season. And the state of Florida, of course, is no stranger to players flipping from one school to another. I'm just going to throw out a couple of names, and John, just give me your opinion on whether you
Yep.
think this player flips or not. First off, James Johnson, defensive tackle, Miami Northwestern, originally from Fort Myers, committed to the Texas Longhorns, flirting with Miami, flirting with Florida as well. You think he stays put with the Longhorns, or does he flip somewhere?
I think I would put this at 60-40 flip. I feel like to me, it's something weird when not weird, just, and by the way, can I just, before I say anything, I'm fully aware that we're talking about a 17 or 18-year-old kid that, we're asking to make a life decision that
Yeah, I know.
we didn't have to make, right? So,
Sure.
at least I didn't. I don't know how good of a prospect you
No,
were coming out of high school. But
no,
I would say, he was committed to Georgia, right? For less than
he
2
sure
months.
was.
And then, maybe not even 2. And then, no, not even 2. And then flips to Texas, which he has every right to do. It just, when I see that, it would not shock me to see him, kind of look at the landscape and go, I think I want to stay closer to home, So, yeah, I'm going to put that at 60-40 flip.
Okay. I agree. I agree with you on that. Especially with Texas's season, the way it's going right now, I think that is a factor. From the conversations that I have with him, it seems like how good the team is performing this season. It seems like a factor. I'm sure there's a lot of other factors involved as well. But I'm just saying, when I speak to him, it sounds like the performance on the field is definitely something that will go into where he signs. And Texas, yeah, they had a good win against Oklahoma with a 50% John Mateer at
Right.
quarterback in a rivalry game. That's their only big win, really, I think, of the season.
Oh,
We'll see
yeah,
how
yeah.
they fare for the rest of the
Two
year.
two high-profile losses in their first 5 games, and a quarterback who he didn't ask to be named Manning, but he does not look like one when he plays. So, yeah, I don't. If you're a Texas fan, I'm not. I'm just not sure what you're excited about right now when you look at what they have on the field.
Agreed. All right. Another player that it seems like it's always like in the mix ever since he committed to Syracuse in the summer, and it just the location itself just seems odd. Syracuse not having the best season, but the 5-star wide receiver Calvin Russell is currently committed to the Orange. He's a legacy guy from Miami. He is also was interested, is interested, Michigan,
Right.
and also Florida State as well. I think you would say are probably the three possible flip targets or destinations from what I hear. That I believe his people around him kind of want him away from Miami. I totally understand that. But his best friend Malachi Toney is balling out at Miami as a freshman, which has to be appealing for him. Do you think he stays committed to Syracuse?
Oh, the fact that I'm hesitating, I think, is interesting. I think he ends up there. I really do. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be an interesting ride over the next several weeks, right? I mean, feels a little bit like, every year we have a big time wide receiver that everybody is holding their breath on, including on signing day and even after, right? We mentioned Jeremiah Smith before. Dallas Wilson last year was a guy that going right up to the deadline, I know Miami was really, really, really trying hard to flip him.
Yes,
Florida was trying hard to flip him. And then he somehow gets flipped after signing day, which is impressive. And now is playing well for Florida. He feels like he's going to be that guy this year, right? That just, it goes down to the wire. When I talked to him about this a couple months ago, the statement, I don't want to misquote him, but I believe the statement was, when I asked him about being a Miami legacy and does he feel any pressure, he's like, I don't owe anybody anything. Like, does he feel like a pressure to, be at his mom's school? And, I think his quote was, I don't know anybody anything. So I feel like Syracuse holds on to it. I just feel like they're going to be white knuckling it for the next 2 months.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see it, bro. Like it's like you think he's gonna stay. I can see that, and I can understand that, but I don't know, man. I just don't see it. Like it
Syracuse
just really
loves. Here's the deal. I think Fran Brown is one of the most underrated recruiters in the country, only because he's at Syracuse, right? But you look at what he did in South Florida last year. He did a great job. The fact that he was able to get Demetrius Samuel out of Heritage away from Florida was epic. And you talk to Demetrius, and the number one reason why he wanted to leave is because of Fran Brown. So, and obviously they have definitely done well with NIL and just what they're offering. So, and Syracuse loves throwing the football, right? I mean, if you come to Miami, and I don't have a problem with it, I went to the U, right? But they want to grind it out and throw, they want the run to open up the pass. They want that dominant, physical Mario Cristobal offensive line that just, we want to be able to run the ball down your throat, and then that opens the playbook for everything else. Syracuse wants to chuck it around the field. So if I'm a wide receiver and I never have to worry about the elements ever at Syracuse, it's, I don't know. And it feels like Fran Brown's probably going to be there for a couple more years after the way this year's gone. So if they can get it to the finish line, I honestly really like it because I feel like it throws a wrench in the, it's only these 4 schools every year kind of a thing, or these 10 schools that are recruiting Florida. So I think Syracuse has done a phenomenal job the last 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's going to be a fun one to watch all the way up until signing day. We'll see where he eventually signs. I'm sure his signing is going to be an event, like his commitment. So I'm excited just to attend it. So anyways, last one for you. Derek Cooper, man, the explosive running back from Chaminade Madonna is currently committed to the Texas Longhorns. Another South Florida guy committed to Texas. Of course, Diabell also committed to Texas, the top quarterback in the nation, according to On Three. Well, in Florida, according to On Three. So Derek Cooper is still being coveted by Miami, Florida State. He was supposed to visit Florida State, and that didn't happen. Not a good sign for the Seminoles at all. But from what I hear, Miami is still very much in this race, although I'm hearing maybe a long shot to flip him. Do you think he stays hooked with the Horns?
Nice wording there. Oof. See, it's funny. He fits Miami really well, right? Like, I mean, just his size, his ability fits Miami really well, but they couldn't seal the deal when he was committing the first time, right? So, and for a while there, it felt like Miami was the hands down team to beat. Then it felt like maybe Georgia, then maybe Miami, and then Texas got him. I think the number one thing that Miami has in its favor right now is its schedule over the next 6 weeks, right? There is going to be a ton of momentum. If they can beat Louisville and they can beat SMU and, do what they're supposed to do, right, based on their schedule. If they are undefeated going into the ACC championship game, the pressure is going to keep building, and the momentum, I think, is going to keep building. And part of the reason why Miami's momentum is just feels a little weird right now is they've played one time in 3 weeks, right? Yeah. So, I mean, but you're going to start having that crescendo of just building if they can keep winning. And by the way, part of the reason they didn't finish well last year is because they didn't finish well last year on the field, especially on defense. You talk to a guy like Gavin Nix. Gavin Nix hated watching Miami's defense at the end of the season last year and said, I don't want to play in that scheme.
Well, Hilton Stubbs said the same thing.
Right. So you're talking about two of their most high-profile commits last year. Drake Stubbs was a guy I absolutely loved out of Mandarin, just an absolute alpha ball hawk, right? And but they didn't want to play in that scheme. They watched the Syracuse game, and maybe even before, right? I mean, there was plenty of evidence before. That's not a fun scheme to play in. But you watch the Syracuse game, and it was embarrassing if you're a Miami guy. And if you're a defensive player and you're going like, yeah, I want to sign up for that. They didn't want to do that. So if Miami, you look at what they have right now, right? The offensive line, big, violent offensive line that just pushes guys, downfield. And they've got a bunch of O-linemen that they have and want to hold on to. I feel like they're in a really good position to do that. You keep winning, guys are going to want to be a part of this. And I feel like that's their biggest recruiting sell, because Derek Cooper's been to Miami so many times, right? Sure. There's nothing he's going to learn about the school. The question is, can they pull at his heartstrings with the way they're playing right now?
Right.
And I feel like the answer on paper is yes. I feel like this is a Miami team that, aside from some, a fourth quarter lapse, just, put it in cruise control against Florida State or whatever, for the most part, they played really, really well this year. Right. And I think there's still questions on how good everybody is other than Notre Dame. I think we know what they are. I don't think we know what Florida is. I don't think we know what Florida State is. It'd be amazing if USF is one of their better wins. But if you can keep winning, I think a guy like Derek Cooper is going to look at Miami just a little bit better every week. So, and especially if Texas is not what they looked like they were going to be in the preseason. This is not the number one team in the country, not by any stretch. They weren't even in the top 25 last week. So I think if you're a Miami fan, that's your best chance, is that he basically gets caught up in a wave of momentum of what Miami's doing.
Yeah, well said. But I think he sticks with Texas. And
I don't think he's going to flip. I think that's your best chance. I'm sorry. That was probably your question. No, I don't think he flips. But because Miami's had more than enough time and more than enough chances over the last 3 years to win him over and hasn't done it.
Yeah, I think it comes down to really two things. I think a lot of these kids look at development. And when it comes to development at the running back position, Texas, can make that argument with anybody. I mean,
Right.
not many teams, period, have a running back go first round like a Bijan Robinson. So I think he sees that. He's seen, I think, 4 or 5 backs be drafted from Texas in the past 4 or so years. I think he sees that. And then the second thing that I think he really sees is the fact that he's the only running back taken in the 2026 class for Texas. And I think him getting on the field obviously is a factor for most players. And I think he wants to get on the field as soon as possible. And I think he sees the best chance for that at Texas. And I think those two factors are really is what will keep him in Austin.
The one thing, if I'm Derek Cooper, that I'm also looking at, though, that is a negative, is that O-line has been atrocious.
Facts.
That O-line has been just awful. And you watch the Florida game, I mean, Arch Manning did not, it was a sieve. So, and I know that didn't they just change their blocking scheme this year? I think they did. They changed their run scheme. So, and it hasn't worked, right? Their O-line is not getting a ton of push up front. And again, that's one thing. If you're looking at Miami, one of the top offensive linemen in the country is committed. They've done a really good job in the state of Florida getting guys. Obviously, they have a head coach. It's a former offensive lineman who wants to run the ball. That could work in Miami's favor because Texas O-line has been trash this year.
Yeah, absolutely. D. Lewis commenting and saying that, NIL is a factor. NIL is always a factor. We just don't talk about it,
Well, and you mentioned before, right, when we first got into this, how many guys are going to flip. We're going to see less high-profile flips than in most years because schools are now paying guys. I mean, let's just, call a spade a spade. There are guys that are already getting paid from these schools, and some quite handsomely. So, the will guys flip? Yeah, and the school's just going to be out of luck, right? But for the most part, I think that most guys that are already getting paid are probably going to stick.
Yeah, I totally agree there. And like I said, with the playing time situation, Ohio State, they got a ton of backs over there. Florida State seems to be solid as well. Miami just has Javion Mallory as the one back that they have. Those two are friends, from what I understand, or kind of talk to each other, know each other from being in South Florida. So if there's any school that he does flip to, I do think it's Miami. But
yeah, I'd agree with that.
I don't think it happens though. I think he stays locked in. All right, John, great stuff from you. This could be one of the best all time podcasts I've done.
That's not good. That's not good for you.
I know. Probably not good. I mean, that means my bar's set pretty low, but whatever. It's all up from here, is all I could say. Thanks for joining me today, John. Once again, John Santucci from USA Today, kind enough to join me for the South Florida Recruiting Report. Hopefully we see you again soon on this podcast.
Appreciate you, my friend.
Appreciate you. That's going to wrap it up for the South Florida Recruiting Report. Make sure you are locked into Rivals and On3 for more recruiting news from myself and, the very large team that we have over there at On3 Rivals for all the latest in recruiting. Until the next episode.